The UN 38.3 is a list of tests laid out in the UN Materials Test Criteria Manual that designates certain cells or batteries that are safe, intrinsically safe for transport, meaning that we already know how these will behave when they're put under real world stresses, like being impacted, crushed at high altitudes and low pressures, and external short circuits. There are currently 8 specific tests involved in the UN 38.3, and they each measure some degree of safety for different real world hazards that you may encounter during shipping. The first one is an altitude test, that's shipment by air at low pressure. The second one is a thermal test, and instead of forcing thermal runaway, this one is more how do the cells or batteries behave in extreme temperature ranges from minus 40 C to plus 70 C. The third test is a vibration test, and that one goes hand in hand with the fourth test. It's a shock test. They pretty much set these cells or batteries on a shaker table and rattle their cage pretty good to see how they'll behave, to make sure that they don't rapidly disassemble or catch fire. And then T5, you've got an external short circuit test where they pretty much tie the positive and negative electrodes together and make sure that they don't catch fire or explode. That's the case with all the tests. T6 is an impact or crush test. T7 and 8 are involved in overcharging and forced discharge to make sure that under normal operating conditions, even if a user were to overcharge slightly or discharge in a very quick manner all the way down to true zero, that the cells are not a hazard. And currently there are 3 new additions being considered for the UN 38.3. One of them is the propagation test, to make sure that if one cell goes into thermal runaway, that it will not force every cell in the battery pack into thermal runaway. And the second 2 go hand in hand. It is a gas volume test to see how much gas the cell will put out and whether or not that gas is flammable. Manufacturers can ensure compliance with UN 38.3 testing by setting up an internal test house, or the more common way of getting a third-party test lab to provide an unbiased test report based on performing all the current UN 38.3 tests, T1 through T8. And in the future, this will also require the additional tests that are currently being worked on by a UN subcommittee to include cell propagation, gas volume, and gas flammability testing.